Her best friend ruined her wedding, but fate bound her to Korea's most feared mafia boss. The wedding venue was chaos. Glass shattered across marble floors. Guests screamed. Zainab Adeyemi stood at the center of the wreckage in her white gown, now stained with wine and something darker. Her fiancé lay unconscious near the altar. Security rushed toward the exit where Tomiwa Daniels, her best friend, her maid of honor, disappeared into a black sedan. Zainab's knees hit the marble floor. Her hands shook as she tried to process what just happened. Tomiwa, her best friend since university, the woman who'd held her through every breakdown, every victory, had just destroyed everything. The betrayal wasn't a knife in the back. It was an explosion she never saw coming. Someone was watching her from the shadows above. A figure in a slate-gray suit stood motionless on the balcony, half concealed by the chaos below. He didn't rush forward like the others, didn't shout orders or offer help. He simply watched her with the focus of a predator who'd found something unexpected. And for reasons Zainab couldn't explain, his presence felt more dangerous than anything Tomiwa had done. First time here, you're already in, stay close. The next story's already in motion. 3 weeks earlier, Zainab arrived in Seoul with a wedding date, a best friend, and a fiancé who'd promised her the world. The city glittered below her hotel window, Gangnam's lights sharp and endless. She'd built a successful consulting firm in Lagos, and her fiancé, David Okonkwo, had expanded his tech startup into South Korea. The wedding was supposed to be their triumph, a fusion celebration. 2 cultures, 1 future. Tomiwa unpacked in the adjoining suite, hanging her bridesmaid dress with the precision she applied to everything. They'd been friends since university, the kind of friendship that survived distance, careers, and the quiet competition neither acknowledged aloud. "You're really doing this," Tomiwa said, not looking at her. Zainab smoothed the fabric of her traveling clothes. "I really am. David's different here, you've noticed." She had. In Lagos, David was charming, attentive, present. In Seoul, he was distracted. Phone calls in Korean he didn't translate, meetings that ran until midnight. But he'd explained it, expansion was brutal, the pressure immense. She understood pressure. "He's building something," Zainab said. "I'm not going to panic over work stress." Tomiwa's smile was thin. "Of course not, you never panic." The comment landed wrong, but Zainab didn't pursue it. They had 2 weeks until the wedding. She had vendors to coordinate, families to host, and a future to finalize. What she didn't know was that David had already broken something he couldn't fix. Kang Joon-seo ran the most efficient operation in Seoul's underworld. Not the largest, not the loudest, but the one even the largest and loudest paid respect to. His organization didn't deal in chaos. They dealt in information, leverage, and debts that people didn't know they owed until collection day arrived. He sat in his office at Cheongdam-dong, a sleek penthouse disguised as a private investment firm. His second-in-command, Min-yi, placed a folder on the desk. "David Okonkwo," Min-yi said, "the tech entrepreneur." Joon-seo didn't open it immediately. "How much?" 300 million won. Borrowed 6 months ago to cover a failed crypto venture. Promised repayment in 90 days. It's been twice that. Joon-seo's expression didn't shift. He'd seen 1,000 David Okonkwos, ambitious men who mistook access for power, who thought a handshake with the right people made them untouchable. "He's getting married," Min-yi added. "Next week, Nigerian bride, big wedding at the Shilla." That detail pulled Joon-seo's attention. He opened the folder. David's file was predictable, over-leveraged, overconfident, drowning in debt from 3 different sources. But the bride's file was different. Zainab Adeyemi, 31, CEO of her own firm. Clean financial history, no debts, no associations with her fiancé's mess. "She doesn't know," Joon-seo said. "No indication she does." Joon-seo studied the photograph, a professional headshot from her company website. She looked directly at the camera, no performance in her expression. He'd learned to read people from still images. This woman wasn't soft. Arrange a meeting with Kang Joon-seo said. Tomorrow, make it clear this is his last conversation on the subject. David arrived at the designated restaurant in Gangnam the next evening, his confidence already fraying at the edges. The private room was elegant, understated. Joon-seo sat alone at the table, his suit jacket draped over the chair beside him. The tattoo on his neck was visible, a detail David's research hadn't prepared him for. "Mr. Kang," David said, forcing a smile, "thank you for meeting me." Joon-seo gestured to the seat across from him. "You're late." "Traffic." "You're late on more than traffic." David's smile collapsed. He sat. "I know I owe you. I'm working on it. The wedding's expensive, but after that I'll have liquidity. My company's about to close a major deal." "You've promised me 3 major deals. None materialized." Joon-seo's voice was even, almost gentle. That made it worse. "You have until your wedding day to deliver full payment. If you don't, I'll take something of equivalent value." David's face paled. "I'll get it, I swear." "People always swear." Joon-seo stood, buttoning his jacket with movements that were unhurried, final. "Enjoy your wedding preparations, Mr. Okonkwo. I'll be seeing you soon." David sat alone in that room for 20 minutes after Joon-seo left, trying to calculate a way out of a trap that had already closed. Zainab met her future mother-in-law for tea 3 days before the wedding. Mrs. Okonkwo had flown in from Lagos with opinions about everything: the venue, the flowers, the fusion menu Zainab had carefully planned. "You're sure about this?" Mrs. Okonkwo asked, stirring her tea with mechanical precision. "Marrying him here in this city?" "We both love Seoul," Zainab said. "It makes sense." "Love," Mrs. Okonkwo set down her spoon. "You've always been practical, Zainab. That's why I thought you were good for David, but practical women know when to ask questions." The statement hung between them. "What questions should I be asking?" Mrs. Okonkwo's gaze was steady. Why a man who could afford a wedding in Italy chooses a city where he's been spending a suspicious amount of time. Why he's nervous in a place he claims to love. Why his phone never stops ringing with calls he won't take in front of you. Zainab felt the ground shift beneath her, subtle but real. "You think he's hiding something?" "I think you should know what you're marrying into before you marry into it." Mrs. Okonkwo stood, collecting her purse. "I love my son, but I love the truth more. And Zainab, you've always deserved the truth." That night, Zainab sat in her hotel suite, David's laptop open in front of her. He'd left it when he rushed to another meeting. She hadn't planned to look, but her future mother-in-law's words had planted something she couldn't ignore. His email was a disaster. Debt collectors, lawyers, threats in Korean she translated through her phone. 300 million won. 6 months overdue. A name that appeared in multiple threads, Kang Joon-seo. She searched the name. Nothing public, no company website, no social media, just whispers in forums and a single news article about a businessman cleared of charges years ago. The kind of absence that meant something. The door opened. David walked in, saw her at his laptop and froze. "Zainab." "Who is Kang Joon-seo?" The color drained from his face. "It's complicated." "Then uncomplicated." David sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The story spilled out. The failed investment, the desperate loan, the organization he'd thought was legitimate until it wasn't. The wedding was supposed to buy him time. His company's deal was supposed to save him. But the deal fell through, and time had run out. "I'll fix it," he said. "After the wedding, I'll sell assets, restructure." "You're using our wedding as a stalling tactic." "I'm trying to protect you." Zainab's voice went cold. "By lying to me, by dragging me into debt with people you're afraid of." "I'll handle it. You don't need to worry." "I'm not worried, David. I'm angry." She closed the laptop. "And I'm thinking." Was staying with someone who'd hidden this kind of danger an act of love or an act of denial? That question sat between them, unanswered. Tamiwa found her on the hotel terrace an hour later. Zainab had called her, needing someone who understood the weight of this choice. "Cancel it," Tamiwa said immediately. "Pack up, go home, be done with him." "It's not that simple." "Why not?" Tamiwa's voice was sharp. "He lied. He's in debt to dangerous people. You don't owe him a wedding after that." Zainab stared at the city lights. "I'm not doing it for him. I'm doing it because walking away from this doesn't erase his debt. It doesn't make me safe. If I'm connected to him, I'm already in this." "Then disconnect." "How? We're registered. We've merged finances for the business. Our families are already here. And if his debt is real, if these people are real, then running might make it worse." Tamiwa moved closer, her expression unreadable in the dark. "So what's your plan?" "I need to understand what I'm dealing with. I need to meet Kang Joon-seo." "That's insane." "Maybe," Zainab turned to face her, "but I'm not walking blind into my own life." Tamiwa was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "I know someone who might be able to arrange it. One of David's Korean contacts. But Zainab, these aren't people you negotiate with." "Then I'll listen. I just need to see him for myself." What Zainab didn't see was the way Tamiwa's jaw tightened, the way her hands gripped the terrace railing too hard. The meeting was arranged for the next evening. A restaurant in Itaewon, public enough to be safe, private enough for honesty. Zainab told David she was meeting a wedding vendor. She told her family she needed air. She arrived early, wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back. No performance, no armor she couldn't afford. Kang Joon-seo arrived exactly on time. He didn't look like the monster she'd imagined from David's fear. He looked like a man who'd mastered the art of control, his suit tailored precisely, his movements economical, his face unreadable except for the sharpness in his eyes. He sat across from her without preamble. "Ms. Adeyemi." "Mr. Kang. You wanted this meeting." "I want to understand my fiancé's debt." Joon-seo tilted his head slightly. "Your fiancé understands it. Why do you need to?" "Because if I'm marrying him, I'm inheriting his consequences. I prefer to know what I'm inheriting before I sign the papers." Something shifted in Joon-seo's expression, not surprise but reassessment. "You're more practical than he is." "Most people are." He almost smiled, almost. 300 million won. Borrowed, promised, undelivered, plus interest. Total, 420 million won by your wedding day. Zainab's stomach dropped, but her face stayed steady. "And if he doesn't pay?" "Then I take collateral." "What collateral?" Joon-seo leaned back, studying her. "That depends on what he values." The implication landed like a blade. "You'd come after me." "I don't come after innocent people, Ms. Adeyemi. But if you marry him, you're choosing to stop being innocent. You're choosing to be his partner. Partners share debts." "That's not how marriage works." "That's exactly how debt works." The silence stretched. Zainab's mind raced through options, calculations, risks. She'd built a company from nothing. She'd negotiated with investors who wanted to own her. She knew how leverage worked. "What if I paid it?" she said. Joon-seo's eyebrows rose, the first unguarded reaction she'd seen. "You have 420 million won. I have assets I could liquidate. To save a man who lied to you. To free myself from his debt." Joon-seo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You destroy what you built to cover his mistakes." "I'd protect what I built from collapsing with his mistakes." "That's not protection, that's sacrifice." His words cut deeper than she expected, because he was right. Paying David's debt would gut her company, strip her savings, leave her starting over. And for what? A marriage already fractured by lies. "Then what do you suggest?" she asked. Joon-seo leaned forward. "Walk away, cancel the wedding, let him handle his own consequences. And if he can't, then he learns what happens when trust is broken. Zainab met his gaze. You sound like you have principles. I have one. I don't punish people for other people's debts. If you walk away before the wedding, you're not his partner. You're not my concern. And if I don't walk away, then you become part of the transaction. Zainab felt the trap tightening. Every choice led somewhere impossible. Stay and risk everything. Leave and abandon someone she'd planned a future with. Pay and destroy herself for someone who'd already betrayed her trust. Why did you agree to meet me? She asked. Joon-seo stood, buttoning his jacket. Because you asked the right question. Most people ask how to avoid consequences. You asked how to understand them. He paused. You're wasting yourself on him. He left her sitting there, the city noise filtering through the window, her future splitting into paths she didn't want to take. Zainab returned to the hotel near midnight. Tomiwa was waiting in her suite, a bottle of wine already open. How did it go? Zainab poured herself a glass. He offered me an exit. If I cancel the wedding, I'm clear of David's debt. Then cancel it. It's not that easy. Zainab, Tomiwa's voice carried an edge. This is your life. David made his choices. You don't have to burn for them. I don't want to burn, I want to think. You've been thinking for days. At some point, thinking is just avoiding. The accusation stung because it was partially true. Zainab had always prided herself on decisive action, but this decision felt like standing at a crossroads where every direction led to loss. What would you do? Zainab asked. Tomiwa's expression shifted, something cold moving beneath the surface. I'd protect myself, no matter what it cost. Even if it meant hurting someone you cared about. Especially then, because people you care about are the ones who can destroy you. Zainab studied her friend's face. They'd known each other for over a decade, but in that moment, Tomiwa felt like a stranger. You've changed, Zainab said quietly. We all have, you just don't want to admit it. The wedding was 2 days away. Zainab made her decision alone in her hotel room at 3 in the morning. She would marry David, not out of love, not anymore, but out of strategy. She would marry him, use the legal protection of their union to negotiate with Joon-seo for structured repayment, and then she would walk away with her assets protected and her dignity intact. It wasn't romantic, it wasn't what she'd imagined, but it was survival. She called David at dawn. I'm going through with the wedding. His relief was audible. Zainab, thank you, I'll fix this, I promise. No, I'll fix it. You're going to sign a post-nuptial agreement giving me full control of both our business assets and decision-making authority on the debt. After we're married, I'll negotiate with Kang Joon-seo. And then we're getting divorced. The silence on the line was heavy. You'd do that? I'm doing this for me, David, not for you. Sign the papers or I walk. He signed. The morning of the wedding, Zainab woke to a call from an unknown number. Ms. Adeyemi, Joon-seo's voice was unmistakable. How did you get this number? I get every number. I'm calling as a courtesy. Your fiancé approached one of my competitors yesterday. He's attempting to borrow more money to pay me, using your company as collateral without your knowledge. Zainab's blood went cold. What? I thought you should know what kind of partner you're choosing. The line went dead. Zainab sat on the edge of the bed, her wedding dress hanging behind her, the magnitude of David's betrayal finally complete. He wasn't just weak, he was reckless. He was willing to destroy her to save himself. She called her lawyer. Within an hour, she had the post-nuptial paperwork voided and a cease and desist sent to David's contact at the competing organization. But the wedding was in 6 hours. Guests had arrived. Families were gathering. And Zainab stood in her suite, staring at the dress she was supposed to wear to a ceremony that had become a lie. Tomiwa entered without knocking. You're not dressed. I'm not going through with it. Tamiwa's face flickered, something Zainab couldn't read. What changed? Everything. He tried to use my company as collateral behind my back. Then you're finally seeing clearly. Tamiwa moved closer. But Zainab, if you cancel now, everyone will know. Your reputation, your business, your family's investment in this event. I don't care. You should, Tamiwa's voice sharpened, because I do. Zainab turned. What? I care about what this wedding cost, what it represents, what it means for people who have been standing in your shadow for years, watching you succeed, watching you get everything. The room temperature seemed to drop. Tamiwa, David came to me 3 months ago. He offered me 20% of your company if I helped him keep you distracted until the wedding, keep you from asking too many questions, keep you focused on dresses and flowers while he handled his business. Zainab's world tilted. You've been working with him. I've been working for myself. Tamiwa's composure cracked. Do you know what it's like? Being the smart friend, the capable friend, the one who's always there, but never the one anyone sees. You built your company. You got the proposals, the opportunities, the spotlight. I got to be your supporting character. So you sabotaged my wedding. I took an opportunity, just like you always taught me. The betrayal cut deeper than David's, because David was a mistake. Tamiwa was supposed to be family. Get out, Zainab said, her voice steady despite the earthquake inside her. You're making a mistake. I said get out. Tamiwa left, her heels sharp against the marble floor. Zainab stood alone in her wedding suite, her dress untouched, her phone ringing with concerned relatives, her future a smoking crater where a celebration should have been. She had 2 hours before the ceremony, 2 hours to decide what happened next. Zainab made one decision in the chaos. She would walk down that aisle. Not because she forgave David, not because she trusted the ceremony anymore, but because canceling would give Tamiwa exactly what she wanted, Zainab broken, humiliated, destroyed in front of 200 witnesses. And Zainab Adeyemi did not break for anyone. The wedding planner found her in the bridal suite 30 minutes before the ceremony, still in her robe, makeup half done, hands finally steady. Ms. Adeyemi, given everything that's happened, we can postpone. No, we're going forward. But your fiancé is in the hospital, your maid of honor has fled, the guests are. Confused, let them stay confused. Zainab met her own eyes in the mirror. I'm getting married today, just not the way anyone expects. What Zainab didn't know was that someone else had made a decision too. Kang Joon-seo stood in the hotel's executive suite, adjusting his cufflinks with mechanical precision. Min-yi watched him with barely concealed concern. You're going to the wedding. I'm protecting my investment, Joon-seo said evenly. David Okonkwo is unconscious in a hospital bed. There's no investment left to protect. There's her. Joon-seo's tone didn't change, but something in it made Min-yi pause. She doesn't know what Tamiwa Daniels really did, or who she did it for. You think this was bigger than jealousy? I know it was. Joon-seo picked up a manila envelope from the desk, photographs, bank transfers, communication logs. Tamiwa didn't sabotage this wedding for David's 20% offer. She sabotaged it because someone paid her 200 million won to make sure Zainab Adeyemi never made it down that aisle intact. Min-yi's expression darkened. Who? That's what I'm going to find out. And I'm going to make sure Ms. Adeyemi survives long enough to hear the answer. The ceremony began 45 minutes late. Guests whispered in the elegant ballroom, unsure whether to stay or leave. David's family sat stone-faced. Zainab's mother looked stricken but resolute. Then the doors opened. Zainab walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away, no maid of honor, no illusions left. Just her in a white wedding gown, holding a bouquet with steady hands, walking toward a future she was about to rewrite in front of everyone. She didn't look at the empty space where David should have been standing. She looked at the officiant. "I have a statement to make." The room went silent. 3 hours ago, I discovered that the man I was supposed to marry has been lying to me for 6 months. He's in debt to dangerous people. He used our relationship as a cover for his failures. And my best friend, her voice didn't waver, conspired with him to destroy everything I built. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras appeared. This was about to become a spectacle. "I'm not here to marry David Okonkwo. I'm here to reclaim what's mine. My dignity, my company, my future. And I'm here to tell whoever orchestrated this." She looked directly at the crowd, at faces she knew and faces she didn't, "that I know you're watching, and I'm not running." That's when she saw him. In the back row, partially hidden by a column, sat the man from the balcony, the one who'd watched her collapse with predator focus. He wore an immaculate black suit, white shirt, black tie. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were locked on her with an intensity that sent ice down her spine. Their gazes met across the ballroom. And something shifted in the air, a recognition neither of them could name yet. She was a woman refusing to be destroyed. He was a man who'd spent 15 years watching people destroy themselves. Zainab turned back to the guests. "This wedding is over, but I'm not." She walked back down the aisle, bouquet still in hand, head high, leaving chaos in her wake. Joon-seo stood and followed her out. He caught her in the hotel corridor, empty except for the two of them. She spun to face him, adrenaline still flooding her system. "Who are you?" "Someone who knows what you just walked away from wasn't the worst of it." "Cryptic doesn't help me right now." "Neither does performing courage in a wedding dress when you don't know who's actually after you." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Tamiwa Daniels was paid to sabotage your wedding. 200 million won. The money came from a shell company registered in Singapore, but the instructions came from someone in your industry, someone who wants you gone." Zainab's breath caught. "How do you know this?" "Because your fiancé borrowed money from me. And when I investigated why he needed it, I found a conspiracy bigger than his stupidity." "You're the one he owed." "Kang Joon-seo. He didn't extend his hand. And you're in more danger than you realize, Ms. Adeyemi." "Then why tell me? Why not just collect from David and walk away?" His jaw tightened. "Because I watched you walk down that aisle alone and call out whoever tried to destroy you. That took more courage than most people in my world possess, and I don't let courage get wasted on ignorance." Zainab studied him, the sharp suit, the dragon tattoo barely visible at his collar, the control in every micro-expression. This man was dangerous, but he was also the first person in months who told her the truth without demanding something in return. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing, yet." He handed her the manila envelope. "But you're going to need help, and when you're ready to admit that, you know how to find me." He walked away, leaving her standing in an empty corridor in a wedding dress, holding evidence of a betrayal far deeper than she'd imagined. Behind her, guests began filing out, cameras still flashing, her life imploding in real time. But Zainab wasn't thinking about the scandal. She was thinking about the man who just handed her the truth like a weapon and walked away without asking for payment. And she was wondering what kind of debt she just incurred by accepting it. The second was to her lawyer. "File a fraud complaint against David Okonkwo and Tamiwa Daniels. I want a full audit of any access they had to my company accounts and client information." The third call was to a number she shouldn't have saved. "Mr. Kang." Joon-seo answered on the first ring. "Ms. Adeyemi, I heard you canceled." "You heard correctly. I need a meeting today." "You're supposed to be getting married." "I'm supposed to be doing a lot of things. Most of them are lies. Can we meet or not?" A pause, then, the same restaurant, 1 hour. Zainab arrived in jeans and a silk blouse, her wedding dress abandoned in a hotel suite she'd never returned to. The restaurant was quieter in the afternoon, just a few tables occupied, soft light filtering through bamboo screens. Joon-seo was already seated. He looked at her differently now, no longer assessing a potential liability but something else, something that looked like respect. "You walked away," he said. "I ran away, there's a difference." He gestured to the seat across from him. "What do you need?" "Information. David tried to use my company as collateral with one of your competitors. You stopped it. Why?" "Because it would have complicated my collection. If someone else had a claim on your assets, I'd have to negotiate with them. I don't like negotiating." "That's not the full answer." Joon-seo studied her. "You're right, it's not." He poured tea from a ceramic pot, the movements precise. "I've spent 15 years in this business. I've collected debts from people who deserved it and people who didn't. I've learned to recognize the difference between someone who made a mistake and someone who's fundamentally broken. Your fiancé is broken. You're not. I didn't want his damage spreading to you." The honesty surprised her. "You don't know me. I know you showed up to meet a man your fiancé was terrified of. I know you asked how to understand consequences, not avoid them. I know you canceled a wedding with 200 guests an hour before it started because you wouldn't marry a liar." He set down the teapot. "I know enough." Zainab felt something shift, a recognition that this man, this dangerous man, had seen her more clearly in 2 conversations than David had in 2 years. "I need your help," she said. "With what?" "Getting my life back. David and my ex-best friend have been coordinating for months. I don't know what information they accessed, what they've compromised, what they're planning next. I need someone who understands how to track betrayal." Joon-seo leaned back. "You want me to investigate them?" "I want you to help me protect what's mine, and in exchange I'll help you get what you're owed from David. Not money, I'm not paying his debt, but information. Access to his records, his communications, his assets. Everything you'd need to collect without it turning into a public mess that damages both our reputations." "You'd work with me against him." "I'd work with you for myself. There's a difference." Joon-seo was silent for a long moment. Then he extended his hand across the table. "1 week. I'll provide security and investigation. You provide access and information. After that, we reassess." Zainab shook his hand. His grip was firm, controlled, and somehow steady in a way nothing else in her life had been for weeks. 1 week, she agreed. The partnership began immediately. Joon-seo assigned 2 of his people to Zainab, a woman named Jaewon who specialized in digital forensics, and a man named Seung-ho who handled physical security. They moved her to a different hotel, one David didn't know about, and began tracing the threads of what had been compromised. The damage was worse than Zainab expected. Tamua had accessed client files, copied contract templates, and shared strategic documents with a competitor who'd been trying to poach Zainab's business for years. David had opened credit lines using their joint business registration, accumulating debt Zainab would have been liable for if she'd married him. Together, they tried to hollow her out from the inside. "This was planned," Jaewon said, her laptop screen filled with timestamps and communication logs. "They started coordinating 4 months ago, right after you got engaged." Zainab sat in the hotel suite's living room, Joon-seo standing by the window. They were waiting for the wedding to finalize it. "The marriage would have locked you in legally," Joon-seo said. "Made it harder to separate your assets from David's debts. Tamua would have had access through your company structure, and David would have had access through your marriage. They would have dismantled everything you built." "Why?" Zainab's voice cracked slightly. "Why go through all of this instead of just asking for help, for money, for partnership?" "Because they didn't want partnership," Joon-seo said, his tone flat. "They wanted what you had without having to be what you are. That's not ambition, that's envy." The word landed hard. Zainab had always prided herself on surrounding herself with driven people, assuming their hunger matched hers. She'd never considered that hunger could turn predatory. "What's the lesson here?" she asked, not really expecting an answer. Joon-seo turned from the window. That proximity to power doesn't make someone powerful, and that the people closest to you can see exactly where to strike because you've shown them every vulnerable point. It wasn't comforting, but it was true. Over the next 3 days, they built a case. Jae-won recovered deleted files, traced fund transfers, and mapped the network of Tamua's attempts to steal clients. Seung-ho tracked David's movements, meetings with loan sharks, attempts to flee to Japan, a desperate call to his family for money they didn't have. Zainab watched it all unfold from the hotel suite, her anger hardening into something colder and more useful: clarity. On the fourth day, Joon-seo brought her to his office in Cheongdam-dong. The penthouse was elegant, minimalist, and utterly controlled, like the man who ran it. "Why am I here?" Zainab asked. "Because you need to make a choice." He handed her a folder. "We have everything we need to destroy them legally. Fraud charges, breach of fiduciary duty, theft of intellectual property. You could bury them both. But legal destruction is slow, public, and exhausting. It will consume your time, your energy, and your reputation. People will ask why you didn't see it coming, why you trusted them, why you let it get this far." Zainab's jaw tightened. "What's the alternative?" "I handled David. You handle Tamua, quietly, completely. No press, no trial, no spectacle, just consequences." "What kind of consequences?" Joon-seo's expression didn't change. "The kind that ensure they never try this again with anyone." Zainab understood what he wasn't saying. The kind of consequences that lived in the gray space between legal and illegal, between justice and revenge. "That's not who I am," she said. "No, but it might be who you need to be." The question sat between them. Was protecting yourself worth stepping into the darkness, even briefly? Zainab took the folder. "Let me think." That night she sat alone in the hotel suite, the city lights stretching endlessly beyond the window. Her phone buzzed with messages from family members demanding explanations, business partners asking about stability, and one message from her mother that simply said, "Come home. We'll figure this out together." But home felt like a place she'd left behind the moment. She realized the people she'd trusted most had been planning her destruction. A knock on the door. Zainab opened it to find Joon-seo standing in the hallway, no security, no pretense. "You don't usually make house calls," she said. "I don't usually work with civilians." She let him in. He moved to the window, his hands in his pockets, his reflection sharp against the glass. "Why are you really helping me?" Zainab asked. "I told you." "You told me strategy. I want the truth." Joon-seo turned. The tattoo on his neck caught the lamplight, a dragon's tail, intricate and permanent. "Because I've watched 1,000 people get betrayed by the people they loved. Most of them collapse. They beg, they negotiate, they try to fix what's unfixable. But you didn't. You walked away from a wedding, called the person your fiancé feared most, and asked for information instead of rescue." He paused. "I don't see that often. I didn't want to watch it get wasted." Zainab felt the weight of his honesty. "You have a savior complex." "No, I have a principle. I told you, I don't punish people for other people's debts. That includes destroying themselves trying to save people who don't deserve it. So you're protecting me from myself. I'm giving you options. What you do with them is your choice." The tension in the room shifted, not romantic, not yet, but something deeper. A recognition. Two people who'd learned to survive by being smarter, colder, more careful than everyone around them. Two people who understood consequences. "I made my decision," Zainab said. "I'll handle Tamua legally. Public charges, full prosecution. She wanted recognition, she'll get it. But David," she met Joon-seo's gaze, "David is yours. Do what you need to do to collect his debt. I won't stop you and I won't ask questions. You're sure? I'm sure that he chose this, and I'm sure I'm done protecting people from their own choices. Joon-seo nodded. Then we have an agreement. He moved toward the door, but Zainab's voice stopped him. Joon-seo. He turned. It was the first time she'd used his given name. When this is over, what happens to us? We walk away, you rebuild your life. I go back to mine, clean separation. And if I don't want clean separation? The question hung in the air. Joon-seo studied her, not with surprise but with something like inevitability. Then we'd be making a mistake, he said quietly. I live in a world that destroys everything it touches. You don't belong in it. You don't get to decide where I belong. No, but I can decide not to drag you somewhere you'll regret. He left before she could respond. The next morning, Zainab filed charges against Tamua. By afternoon, the story had leaked. Former best friend accused of corporate espionage and fraud. The business community erupted with speculation. Zainab's phone exploded with interview requests, support messages, and the kind of attention she'd never wanted. But she'd learned something from Joon-seo. Sometimes survival required spectacle. Sometimes you had to let people see the betrayal so they understood the stakes. Tamua was arrested at her hotel. The footage showed her in handcuffs, her face blank, her designer clothes suddenly costume-like under the harsh light of consequence. Zainab watched the news coverage from Joon-seo's office. He stood beside her, silent. I don't feel victorious, she said. You shouldn't. Victory isn't the same as vindication. Then what is this? Survival, the beginning of rebuilding, the end of bleeding. David's consequences came quieter. Joon-seo's people found him at Incheon Airport, attempting to board a flight to Singapore with falsified documents. The debt was collected through asset seizure, his company, his apartment, his savings. Everything he'd built on borrowed money and broken promises. He left Korea with nothing but a passport and a one-way ticket funded by his family's last bit of mercy. Zainab never saw him again. The investigation took 3 weeks. The trial took 4 months. Tamua was convicted of fraud and corporate espionage. Zainab's company survived, her reputation shifted from victim to fighter, and her client base actually grew. People wanted to work with someone who didn't collapse under betrayal. But the cost was internal. She'd lost trust. She'd lost the version of herself who believed proximity meant safety. She'd learned that the people you let closest could see exactly where to cut you deepest. Joon-seo's office became an unlikely refuge during those months. She'd stop by after meetings, after depositions, after days when the weight of rebuilding felt unsustainable. They didn't talk about feelings. They talked about strategy, leverage, the mechanics of survival. But proximity was dangerous for different reasons now. One evening after the trial ended, Zainab found Joon-seo on his office balcony. Seoul glittered beneath them, indifferent to their survival. It's over, she said. The legal part is. What about the rest? He turned to face her. The dragon tattoo on his neck seemed darker in the evening light. What rest? This, us, whatever this has become. Joon-seo's expression was unreadable. We agreed. We agreed to work together. We did. Now I'm asking what happens after the agreement ends. You go back to your life, I stay in mine. Why? Because I'm not the person you build a future with, Zainab. I'm the person you survive with temporarily. There's a difference. She moved closer. What if I don't want different people for different purposes? What if I want someone who understands how to survive and how to build? Then you want something I can't be. Or you're afraid to try. The accusation hung between them. Joon-seo's jaw tightened. I've spent 15 years ensuring people pay their debts. I've made decisions that would horrify you. I've built an empire on other people's failures. You think that's compatible with the life you're rebuilding? I think compatibility is a choice, not a condition. And I think you're confusing gratitude with attraction." The words stung because they were designed to. Zainab stepped back. "You're right, I am grateful. Grateful you showed me what it looks like when someone's honest about who they are and what they can offer. Grateful you didn't try to save me. You just gave me the tools to save myself." She met his gaze. "But don't insult me by pretending gratitude is all this is." Joon-seo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "If I let you into my life fully, you'll see things you can't unsee. You'll be connected to decisions that could destroy everything you've rebuilt. The legal world, the business world you operate in, they won't forgive proximity to someone like me. I stopped caring about what won't be forgiven when I filed charges against my best friend. That was justice. This is something else." "What is it?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "It's choosing someone who operates in gray spaces because you've learned black and white don't actually exist. It's deciding that safety with the wrong person is more dangerous than risk with the right one. It's admitting that sometimes the people who understand darkness are the only ones who can teach you how to find light." Zainab's breath caught. "That's not an answer." "Yes, it is. You're just afraid of what it means." She was. But fear had stopped dictating her choices the moment she canceled her wedding 2 hours before it started. "1 month," she said. "Give me 1 month of honest proximity. No agreements, no strategy, no protection. Just you and me figuring out if this is survival instinct or something real. If it doesn't work, we walk away clean. But if it does, you're choosing a life that will never be simple." "I've never wanted simple. I wanted real." Joon-seo studied her face, reading her the way he'd read every situation, every risk, every person who'd ever sat across from him. Whatever he saw made his decision. 1 month, he agreed. The month was not romantic in any traditional sense. There were no dates, no grand gestures, no performances. Instead, there was honesty. Joon-seo showed her his world without apology, the meetings where debts were negotiated, the decisions that kept his organization functional, the moments where mercy and consequences balanced on a knife's edge. Zainab didn't flinch. She asked questions. She challenged his reasoning. She offered perspectives from her world that sometimes shifted his approach. And slowly, proximity became partnership. They learned each other's boundaries. Joon-seo's principle, never punish innocent people for others' debts, was absolute. Break that and you broke him. Zainab's line was clarity. She could accept gray decisions as long as they were honest. Lie to her, even for protection, and she'd walk. They learned each other's languages. He taught her Korean phrases for negotiation. She taught him the cultural nuances of her clients' expectations. They built a vocabulary that existed only between them, shorthand for trust, danger, truth, and choice. And they learned that attraction built on survival was different from attraction built on fantasy. It was grounded. It required both people to show up fully, flaws exposed, darkness acknowledged. It didn't promise happiness. It promised honesty. 6 weeks after the trial ended, Zainab's company secured its largest contract, a multinational client who'd been watching her rebuild with interest. The celebration was private, just Joon-seo and her on his office balcony with expensive whiskey and exhaustion that felt earned. "You did this yourself," he said. "I did this with better judgment. You taught me that. I taught you suspicion. You taught me discernment. There's a difference." Joon-seo smiled, a real smile, rare and unguarded. "You're going to be insufferable when you're successful." "I'm already successful. I'm going to be unstoppable." He kissed her then, not because the moment was perfect, but because it was real, because they'd survived the worst versions of betrayal and chosen each other anyway, because proximity had become something deeper than strategy. When they pulled apart, Zainab said, "I'm not moving to Korea permanently." "I wouldn't ask you to." But I'm not walking away either. I wouldn't survive it if you did. The admission was raw, unplanned. Joon-seo never lost control, but Zainab had become the exception to every rule he'd built. "So what do we do?" she asked. "We figure it out together. No agreements, no endgame, just this. Just this." 3 months later, Zainab split her time between Lagos and Seoul. Her company expanded into Asian markets with Joon-seo's strategic guidance. His organization shifted slightly, less aggressive collection, more negotiation, influenced by her insistence that people deserved chances before consequences. They didn't live together. They didn't perform for anyone. But they built something solid in the space between their worlds, a relationship that existed on honesty, respect, and the understanding that darkness and light weren't opposites, they were balance. Tomiwa served 18 months. When she was released, she sent one message to Zainab: "I was wrong." Zainab never responded. Some betrayals didn't deserve reconciliation. They deserved acknowledgement and distance. David disappeared into obscurity. Occasionally, Zainab would hear about him through business circles, always struggling, always reaching, never learning. She felt nothing. Not anger, not pity, just the quiet satisfaction of having survived him. The lesson she carried forward wasn't about avoiding betrayal. It was about recognizing it faster, trusting herself deeper, and understanding that the people who helped you survive weren't always the ones you expected. Sometimes they were the ones everyone warned you about. Sometimes they were the ones who showed you exactly who they were and trusted you to make your own choice. Sometimes they were the ones who taught you that protection wasn't about being shielded, it was about being seen. Zainab stood on Joon-seo's office balcony 1 year after her canceled wedding. Seoul glowed beneath her, no longer foreign but familiar. Joon-seo joined her, his hand finding hers with the ease of repetition. "Do you regret it?" he asked. "Everything that led here?" She thought about the question seriously. The wedding that never happened, the friendships that shattered, the version of herself who believed trust was automatic rather than earned. "No," she said finally, "I regret who I lost, but I don't regret who I found." He squeezed her hand. No words, just presence. And in the space between survival and choice, they built something neither of them expected. A future where danger and safety coexisted, where honesty mattered more than perfection, and where love looked less like rescue and more like two people deciding every day that the risk was worth it. The wedding venue was chaos, but standing in the wreckage of that day, watching everything collapse, Zainab had made the only choice that mattered. She chose herself. And somehow, in choosing herself, she found the one person who wouldn't ask her to be anything other than exactly who she was. Seoul taught her that home wasn't a place. It was a choice you made, over and over, with someone who saw all of you and stayed anyway. She chose to stay. So if someone asked you whether love built on survival could be real, whether proximity to darkness made someone unsuitable for your light, what would you say?